So today I want to talk about what happens when things don't go quite as planned on your trip, or also known as the day we visited the medical center on the ship. So this is not the first time, unfortunately, when we've gone cruising with Benji that we've had to visit the medical center. On the first sea day, the second day of our trip on Symphony of the Seas, Benji woke up and he was having some ear pain. He's had ear pain in the past, has had tubes and things like that, but one of his tubes had fallen out. And he usually doesn't complain about pain that he has, so it seemed like a pretty easy choice. We really needed to go to the medical center and see what they, if there was something they could do. We had brought child ibuprofen or child Motrin or child Tylenol, which is always a good idea to bring with kids because the ship may have regular Tylenol or regular ibuprofen, but they may or may not have the kid version. So we gave him some of that for his pain, and then we went down. Actually, we tried to go down to the medical facility, and when we went to the elevator lobby, our room was on the aft elevators, and it said go to the forward. So we went to the forward and went down to one, and security's like, what are you doing here? The medical facility's on the other end. And we went out and looked, and it said facilities were on the aft. And I was like, that's weird. I swear they said forward on the other ones. And so we went back up, crossed over, and sure enough, it did say forward. So on Symphony of the Seas, at least some of the elevator lobbies, they have medical listed on the other elevators. But you want to go on aft. So we went down to, we waited for the hours that it was listed as open in the app. And we went downstairs to deck one, and there was just a waiting room, a mirrored glass reception area, and a door, and that was it. And it's kind of like, what are we supposed to do? Am I supposed to knock on the glass? Is someone going to see us? A couple other people had come in to talk to them about, I think, seasickness, and they told them, oh, they have pills up at guest relations. But the nurse came over and talked to us, like, oh, he has an ear infection. She said, do you have an appointment? And my response was, I did not realize we needed to make an appointment. That's not that I saw on the literature in the app. So she called a number from there and made an appointment for us for the evening, like 6 or 7. So we left, we gave him the Tylenol, and that seemed to help a little bit. So we went back in the evening at our time, and, again, we're in this room, there's no window or call button, or there's a window, one-way window, but there's no other way. I'm like, are we just supposed to sit here? Are we supposed to knock? There's not really directions about what you're supposed to do. But the woman came out and took us back and sat us down to start doing, temperature and weight and all that kind of stuff. And they just asked the weight and height. They didn't, actually measure it. And then she did tell us, she said, just so you know, this consultation will cost $307. So I guess at least they warned us before we did it, but that was the cost to go see the doctor on the ship. Now, I believe that they provide free consultations, like if you are seasick or if you think you may have noro or something like that, like gastro things. I think they're going to see you for free. I don't think you have to pay the fee, but there definitely is a charge for the doctor on the ship. Now we said okay, and I had bought trip insurance, so that's that's another reason why there was not really a hesitation about that. But I mean, what are you going to do? You're on the ship. You're not going to just probably stay in pain because you don't want to pay the money to go to the doctor. I guess the next day we were in Cozumel. It's possible we could have just gotten off and tried to get some antibiotics, but that didn't seem like the responsible thing to do. So anyway, we got escorted back into a room that had 2 beds, some alarm going off in the background, and there were 3 rolly chairs in the middle of the room. So we were sat on the rolly chairs and we were told to wait for the doctor. The bed linens were kind of gross, which was not, the best environment in the world. But we sat there probably for 15 minutes, and the doctor came in and took us to his office. So once in his office, he had Benjamin sit down, and he took out the otoscope and looked in his ears, and was like, I see the I see the drainage, or I see things that have been discharge coming out of his ears, and then he actually had my wife like look in the ears too to show her. So I mean, essentially, he said, yeah, it's an ear infection. I can't really see the other ear that much, but it looks okay. So we'll give some antibiotics. So they took us back to the dirty sheet room, and we sat there probably for another 15 minutes while they got the antibiotics ready. And so they ended up giving him 5-day course of liquid amoxicillin. This is kind of the standard stuff that we get here at our local pharmacy. I did ask about whether it needed to be refrigerated or not, just because we would be traveling a little bit after we got off the ship for like the last couple doses, and the doctor was like, it says you can, but it's okay if you don't. I'm like, okay. And then we got some cups, the little dosing cups, and this really odd thing where he's like, by the way, those are kind of sitting out. We're sitting out in the room and not in wrapping, so you might want to wash those. That's not exactly the description of the things I'm putting my medicine in that I want to hear. And we obviously had some dosage cups for the Motrin and Tylenol, but that was like... Anyway, the final cost for the visit and the drugs was about $392. And we got the amoxicillin. We also got some spray for the ear too, like a topical spray. So we went up and, gave him the dose, and things seemed to get better. Didn't have problems with the ear the rest of the trip. Now, by the next day, I hadn't received the bill or anything like that from the doctor's office. And so by the last sea day, I still hadn't, by the morning I hadn't gotten anything. So I talked to the suite concierge about it. She called down and said, oh, they have one. You can go down and get it. And I was like, okay. And so I sat down for breakfast, and I guess she decided to go down and get a copy for me, which was very nice of her. I appreciate the concierges doing that sort of thing. And then later on in the day, I actually did get one put in my door, and that's what I was waiting for. And that's like the most important part of this, right? Like even if you say, oh, I have trip insurance, you need to get that encounter summary for filing your trip insurance, because it has, the date, it has the cost, and it also has the diagnosis codes for the insurance purposes, right? So the ear infection has some diagnosis code, right? So that's what you really need to have to get your insurance filing. Now, I haven't actually been approved for my insurance yet, so that could be a future story. But when I had to fill out everything when I returned, I needed to have copies of all that documentation with the diagnosis codes and the cost. Then I also needed to give them a copy of my billing statement, like the final statement from the cruise, with that cost showing on there, and then that was paid by my my credit card at the end. So you need to make sure you have all that paperwork before you get off the ship. Now, they might be able to help you after you get off the ship for this type of thing, but I get really nervous. I don't know how much experiences you have with cruises, but most general wisdom is if you run into a problem or if you need something, shoreside service is not going to necessarily help you as much as like on the ship. So if you need something on the ship, or something's not working on the ship, or you're unhappy with something on the ship, you need to tell them on the ship, because there's just a disconnect sometimes between shoreside and shipside. But anyway, so I had all that stuff. I submitted it. Like I said, I still haven't gotten the outcome of that. But if you don't have that, if you just submit the bill, for example, that's probably going to get rejected. So insurance, it did cost some money, right? Well, this, and this happened to me before too. It was cheaper. I swear it was $170, not $300 and some dollars to visit. But, you go in something simple like that, that's going to more than pay the cost of the trip insurance. And I didn't buy it through Royal Caribbean. I bought it through a third party, through something like Insure My Trip, where you can kind of go through and choose what you need for travel. I think maybe if I had done it through Royal Caribbean, they may not have even billed me, because it was, they would know I have insurance. So maybe that would have been easier. But again, the value of trip insurance for things like this, especially traveling with kids, right? an ear infection, sore throat, things that they may not be really good at diagnosing. They just know that they're in pain and they can't really get over. Maybe, if I'm an adult and my ear hurts, I'm going to be able to make the decision about whether or not I need to go see the doctor, or, I can just use painkillers or something. Well, Benji obviously couldn't do that, and so we were looking, to try to help him the best that we could. Other things about trip insurance now, since I'm on that topic, baggage loss or delay from the airlines, airline problems, having something lost on the port, having to return for some reason. And always the big one is medical evacuation. So like if you're on the ship and they have to take a helicopter out to get you, because something, this money is probably like the least of your concern at that time if that's what's happening. But having something that would cover that type of evacuation, where it could be $100,000 worth of expenses is always a good idea. So trip insurance, it always feels like that's a little bit of an extra cost that you really wish you didn't have to spend, but I think it can make you just feel better about, more secure about having it. I'll also say I believe there are some, you can buy a yearly subscription to trip insurance. So if you're doing a lot of travel, you can try that. I haven't done that yet, but I might have to look into that if we keep going on these types of trips. But something as simple as an earache on Royal Caribbean cost us almost $400, which was well over that cost of trip insurance. So I definitely recommend third-party trip insurance even that covers, you don't need rental car insurance or any of that, but having something that covers that trip to the infirmary on the ship is probably a good idea, especially with kids. So anyway, thanks for listening to my story, and maybe it'll be an update. We'll see how much of a struggle I have getting my reimbursement. So more to come. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's like they paid it, but I guess we'll see. Have a good one, everyone.